Hello everyone, I'm presenting my IoT data management API project in front of you. So let me give you a brief description about the project. This is a microservice project which helps the IoT devices to efficiently store, retrieve, and manage diverse data fragments through the APIs. This service can be integrated in an industry which has a lot of IoT devices. It will make it easy for the IoT devices to maintain their data. Let's talk about the tech stack which I used to build this project. I built this project in Node.js using Express. I wrote all the unit tests in Jest. Further, I have Dockerized the whole application and it is deployed in AWS. Also, that I store all the data in DynamoDB as well as S3 bucket. I have the whole CI/CD setup for automatically deploying the whole project whenever I push the code. Further, let's talk about the APIs which this application provides. So first in Get APIs, it has get fragment, which gives an array of all the fragments stored by that particular user. Then we have slash v1 slash fragment slash id. This gives a particular fragment. Then we have the same API, but it has .ext. So what it does is that, for example, an IoT device has stored an image in JPEG format. Now that device wants the image in, let's say, PNG format. So there is an API through which they can get it in a particular format. We have a list of formats in which the data can be converted. The next API is slash v1 slash fragment slash id slash info. So this returns the metadata of that particular fragment. Now we have the post API, which helps the IoT devices to store the fragment. The requirement of this API is that the header should have the content type property, which is the type of the fragment they wish to store. And this API returns a URL from where that IoT device can access that particular fragment which is stored. Moving forward, we have put API. This helps the user to update the existing fragment. However, one thing to note here is that the type of the fragment cannot be changed once it's updated. Lastly, we have delete APIs. Now, finally, let me move to the most excited part of this project, which is the AWS services which I have used. So the first service which I have used is AWS Cognito for authenticating the user. The second service which I have used is EC2 instance. So I just used EC2 instance while I was developing this project to check if the APIs are working properly or not. I'm using DynamoDB to store the metadata of all the fragments being stored. Moving forward, I use S3 bucket to store the actual fragment. Now let me walk you through the Docker file of this project. So this is the Docker file of my project. I have separated the Dockerization in separate stages. So in the first stage, I install all the dependencies. So I use Node as my base image and my working directory is slash application. I copy both my package.json and packageinfo.json into the application, and then I run npm install. In the second stage, I developed the project and my working directory is again slash application. So from the dependencies, I first copy all the dependencies, then I copy the source files and all the tests which I need. And in the last stage, I again use Node as my base image. I add some labels. I declare an environment variable for the port. Again, my working directory is application, and I copy the whole application from the development, and then I finally start the server and expose the port 8080. And I keep running this health check just to make sure that everything is working fine. Now let me walk you through the CI workflow of this project. So this workflow is triggered whenever the code is pushed to the master branch. So first it declares the environment variable, and in the list of job, I have the first job is to check for all the lint errors to make sure that the core standards are imposed throughout the project. The second job is also for checking lint errors throughout the Docker file. And then I have a job with the name unit test, which runs all my unit tests to make sure that the application is working perfectly fine as expected. After that, I have integration test, which makes sure that the application is working completely fine from end to end. Lastly, I have a DockerHub job. All the above jobs are kind of dependency for this job. So I make sure that if there is any test which is failing, this workflow does not build and pushes an image of the application to the DockerHub. So what this does is that it takes my DockerHub credentials from the GitHub secrets, builds a Docker image for the application, and pushes that image to the DockerHub. So this was my continuous integration workflow. Now let me walk you through the continuous development workflow. So this workflow is only triggered when I push a version tag to the GitHub. So this only does one job, which is deploying the project on AWS. Let me walk you through all the steps which this particular job performs. So firstly, it builds the whole Docker image and then tries to log in into my Amazon ECR using my GitHub secrets. Moving forward, it pushes the build image to the Amazon's Elastic Container Registry. In the next step, it updates the ECS tasks definition to make sure that the latest image of the application is being deployed by the Amazon ECS. Once the task definition is being updated, it deploys it to the Amazon ECS. So this was my whole CI/CD workflow, and this was my whole cloud project which I made. Thanks for listening, and make sure to give your valuable feedbacks in the comments.